For years, people thought they knew the story of one of music's biggest icons, a mogul, a hitmaker, a symbol of power in an industry built on image. But every spotlight casts a shadow, and in 2025, a new documentary peeled back that glossy surface and showed something far more unsettling. And right in the middle of it, someone the world met back in the early 2000s, a singer who once stood on the biggest reality TV stage in music, full of fire, confidence, and talent, Aubrey O'Day. The documentary didn't just revisit rumors, it introduced new testimonies, new claims, and one affidavit so disturbing that even Aubrey herself struggled to process it. And now, with the world watching, her story is resurfacing in ways no one expected. What really happened during those early Danity Kane years? What was going on behind the scenes? And how much of it was known, long before the cameras stopped rolling. Before all the scandals and headlines, there was the empire, the mogul, the brand. He shaped the soundtrack of an entire generation, launched careers, and became one of the most recognizable names in global entertainment. He wasn't just in the culture, he was the culture. Back then, his confidence was seen as charisma. His controlling nature was interpreted as discipline. And the people around him? Most didn't question it. Why would they? They wanted a career, they wanted fame. And he held the keys to both. Shows like Making the Band painted him as the tough but brilliant mentor. The man who demanded perfection because he expected greatness. But the documentary challenges that image and suggests something else was happening. Something far darker, hidden behind soundproof studio walls and contracts no one dared to read too closely. And into that world walked a young woman who had no idea what she was stepping into. But what happened next is where everything begins to shift. Aubrey O'Day wasn't just another contestant. She had presence, confidence, a certain spark that made her stand out the moment she appeared on screen. Viewers saw it, judges saw it, and according to the documentary, so did the mogul running the show. When Danity Kane formed, Aubrey quickly became one of its central faces. She could sing, she could dance, she knew how to perform. But with that attention came something else. Extra pressure, different expectations, and, as she later claimed, a level of scrutiny that no one else in the group was dealing with. In the doc, Aubrey explains that she always felt singled out. He made it clear I was the looker, she says. Not the vocalist, not the dancer, the looker. Strings, she says, got tangled into something much darker. It's only later that she shares just how far those expectations allegedly went. And that's when the story takes a sharp turn. Because if her early years felt uncomfortable, what would be revealed next shook even her. When Aubrey sat for her documentary interview, she didn't just tell her story. She brought receipts, emails she says she kept for years. According to her, these messages weren't about rehearsals, music, or schedules. They were explicit, suggestive, and as she describes it, harassing. She claims the messages came after she refused to open up to him. She says that ever since that moment, it felt like every interaction had an underlying expectation. Her talent wasn't the focus anymore. Her compliance was. She recalls being punished on camera, talked down to, separated from the group, and eventually pushed out when she didn't give him what she says he wanted. In the documentary, she reads pieces of these emails out loud. They're graphic, they're unsettling, and they leave almost no ambiguity about what he was asking for. One line, she says, made her stomach drop. He allegedly wrote that he wanted to turn her out, followed by descriptions of what he wanted her to do and what he expected from his women. But even that shocking reveal wasn't the moment that truly broke her. The moment came when she was handed an affidavit, one that forced her to confront a part of her past she didn't even remember. And that's when the story reaches its most disturbing claim yet. In the documentary, Aubrey is shown an affidavit from a woman who claims she witnessed a disturbing incident involving Aubrey years ago. The woman claimed she saw Aubrey on a leather couch, looking extremely out of it, barely conscious. According to this witness, Aubrey wasn't fully clothed. She claimed the mogul was next to her, doing something inappropriate. And beside him, she says, stood another man. This affidavit is where the documentary becomes deeply unsettling. Not because of what it claims, but because of Aubrey's reaction. Aubrey says she has no memory of it. None. She doesn't drink heavily. She says she never did. So how could something like that happen, she wonders, without her knowing? In the interview, she says she questioned the witness repeatedly. Are you sure it was me? Could you be mistaken? Each time, she says, the witness insisted. It was you. Aubrey's voice shakes as she recounts it. She says the idea that something happened without her knowledge terrified her. "Does that mean I was assaulted? Is that what this means?" she asks. And then she says a phrase that stayed with viewers long after the documentary ended. "I don't want to know, I really don't." But despite her fear, she also felt something else: responsibility. And that responsibility came with consequences she didn't expect. Because speaking out, she says, could either protect people or destroy them. Aubrey explains that she hesitated to confront or challenge the witness publicly, not because she believed everything, but because of what her reaction might trigger. "If she made it up," Aubrey says, "I would feel compelled to take her down." But then she explains the other side. "If I do that, Diddy's legal team could use it to discredit other women, and I can't carry that." That's the part that reveals the emotional toll. It's not just fear of retaliation, it's the fear of hurting other alleged victims. She says that for a year she carried the weight of wondering whether denying the affidavit could erase someone else's truth. And at the same time, staying silent meant leaving open the question of what really happened to her. She describes it as drowning under someone else's power. Power she says he had long after she left Diddy Kane. Power she felt she could never escape. And while she struggled with this burden, other people came forward with their own stories. And that wider pattern is what the documentary leans into next. The documentary doesn't rely on one story or one allegation. It gathers testimonies, timelines, documents, emails, text messages, and legal filings spanning decades. It shows former employees, artists, assistants, and insiders describing similar experiences, claims of intimidation, control, manipulation, and pressure. Many say they stayed silent out of fear. Some describe their careers being derailed overnight. Others say they watched people get humiliated, isolated, or pushed aside. One person in the doc claims he saw financial decisions that didn't make sense. Another claims he witnessed people being treated like property. Yet another says he stayed close to the mogul only because he feared what would happen if he didn't. But the doc doesn't tell the audience what to believe. It presents the claims, shows the footage, and lets viewers come to their own conclusions. And that's where Aubrey's story becomes more than just her own, because in the larger context, her experience looks like one piece of a much bigger picture. But even as the documentary exposes these layers, Aubrey's personal journey, her confusion, her fear, her determination, remains one of its emotional centers. And it all leads to one final question, one that the public still struggles to answer. The most haunting part of Aubrey's interview isn't the affidavit. It's the way she talks about trust. She trusted the show. She trusted the dream of fame. She trusted the people who promised to protect her career. And all of that shattered. What she's left with, she explains, is a lingering sense that her entire early adulthood was shaped by someone else's power. Someone she says used charm, fear, and control interchangeably. When she looks back, she says she sees a version of herself trying to survive an environment she didn't fully understand, trying to keep her place in the group, trying not to lose everything she worked for, and whether every allegation is proven or not, she says the emotional damage is undeniable. The confusion, the memories she questions, the trauma she didn't recognize until years later. The documentary ends without a verdict, without declaring guilt, without offering closure. Instead, it asks viewers to consider the complexity of truth when fame, power, and fear collide. And maybe that's why people walked away shaken. Not because the documentary told them what to think, but because it allowed them to think for themselves. The documentary doesn't ask us to pick a side. It asks us to look closer, to question what we dismiss, to recognize how many stories get buried under the glow of celebrity. And whether you believe every allegation or not, one thing is clear. Aubrey O'Day walked into the industry thinking she was chasing a dream. What she says she found instead was something she never could have imagined. Something she's still trying to process today. And maybe that's the real takeaway. That beneath every headline, every rumor, every documentary clip, there's a human being still trying to make sense of what happened to them. So the question becomes, how many stories like hers are still waiting to be heard?